My name is Emily Carter. I'm 46 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed in loyalty above all else. I was stationed overseas, serving my final deployment after 22 years in the military. It was supposed to be my last stretch before retirement. I had counted the months with both excitement and dread. Excited to finally return home, and terrified I wouldn't make it back. The email came on a Tuesday. Subject: important, nothing else. I sat in the communications tent, still wearing my tactical vest, sweat clinging to my back. When I clicked it open, the words blurred for a moment. I thought it was a prank, maybe a virus. Emily, I'm filing for divorce. I've already moved out. Don't contact me. It's better this way. My hand trembled as I scrolled down. There was no explanation. Just a scanned image of the signed divorce papers and a list of items he claimed were divided fairly. I stared at the name, Ryan Carter, my husband of 17 years. My mind couldn't process it. The man who had kissed me before I left, who promised to wait, who swore we were in this together, had just walked out. By email. I stumbled out into the scorching sun. My commanding officer spotted me but didn't ask. In deployment zones, silence is how we survive. Pain waits. That night, I couldn't sleep. I checked our online banking, desperate to feel in control of something. Zero. Our joint savings. Gone. Retirement fund? Emptied. Even the small vacation account we had built for our dream trip? Drained. He'd taken everything. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I wrote him back. You stole 17 years and left me with dust. But God sees, and so will you. That was all I said. And I meant every word. I spent the next few weeks buried in routines that no longer meant anything. Eat, patrol, report, repeat. But every night, after lights out, I lay on my cot staring at the tin ceiling, wondering how many lies one man could tell while still looking you in the eye. Ryan had always been the charming one. He ran a small insurance firm, knew how to talk to people, how to earn trust. He used to say, "We don't need to be rich, Em. We just need to be steady." Apparently, he changed his mind. I started asking around discreetly. A friend back home, Jenna, checked on my house. Emily, he sold it. 3 weeks after you left. The house I had bought before we were even married, the one we remodeled together. He had forged my signature on the paperwork, Jenna suspected. But I was thousands of miles away, and justice was slow. He's living with someone new, she added. Young, blonde, real estate agent, fancy apartment. He's different. Number? He was just revealed. I kept quiet. My deployment was a desert far from any courtroom. But what broke me wasn't the betrayal. It was how easily he discarded me, as if I were a bad investment. You're not forgotten, Sergeant Diaz said one evening, handing me a worn pocket Bible. When men fail, God doesn't. I didn't open it right away. I wasn't sure if I believed that anymore. One night, during a dust storm, we were stuck in the bunker. That's when Diaz told me his story, how his wife cheated while he was away. I stayed quiet, didn't want to seem weak, he admitted. But silence doesn't heal. Faith does. His words stayed with me. Not like comfort, but like a seed, buried deep, waiting. I started reading small passages each night. One line haunted me. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where thieves break in and steal. It was Matthew, I think. I read it twice, then again. He had taken the money, the house, my sense of home, but not my spirit. I returned home 6 weeks later, not in uniform, just jeans, an old hoodie, and boots coated in desert sand. No one met me at the airport. I took a cab to Jenna's house. She hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe, then poured coffee into a chipped mug and let me sit in silence. "I filed a fraud report on your behalf," she said softly. "It won't be easy, but you have options." I nodded. My voice hadn't come back yet. 3 days later, I walked past the building where Ryan's firm used to be. It was gone, moved, rebranded. His name scrubbed from everything. Jenna helped me dig. Turns out, Ryan hadn't just taken the money. He had transferred it into offshore accounts, liquidated pensions, and refinanced my old home in secret. He played the long game, while I trained, deployed, and trusted. He schemed. I filed a report with the police. I called a lawyer. And then I did something unexpected. I got a job. Not just any job. I became a night security guard at a downtown bank. Irony? Maybe. But I needed cash. Fast. Legal fees were high. And my retirement? Gone. Every night I walked the marble halls, watched the camera feeds, and stood guard over wealth that didn't belong to me. But somehow, it gave me strength. One night, as I sat in the lobby during my break, an elderly janitor named Marvin asked, "You lost something, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He just nodded. "People come here thinking money's safety, but money's like wind. It never stays." He reached into his worn jacket and handed me a tiny laminated card. It had another verse. "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." I didn't know what was more shocking, how much it hurt to read or how much I wanted to believe it. That same week, Jenna called. "He's throwing a party. Big place. Flashy cars outside." A party, while I was scraping together gas money. I went. I didn't crash it. I stood outside, leaning on a streetlight, watching people laugh under chandeliers I'd helped pay for. I watched him wrap his arm around that young woman, like he hadn't once held me the same way. And then I left. But not before I whispered, "God, I don't want revenge. I want peace. Show me how." That prayer changed everything. I began rebuilding, not for revenge, but for freedom. During the day, I visited the local courthouse, filling out paperwork, meeting with a quiet, sharp attorney named Melissa, who spoke like every word cost money. "We'll go after him, but it's a long road." I nodded. "I've marched through worse." At night, I guarded vaults of people who would never know my name. I watched rich men in suits drop off briefcases and women in heels ask about investments. I wrote their names in logs, smiled politely, and walked the corridors like a ghost. Marvin, the janitor, became my unexpected friend. "You're tougher than you look," he said once, sipping black coffee beside me. "But don't forget, you're allowed to feel." "I don't have time for feelings," I said. "You will, when the silence gets loud enough." He was right. The silence roared louder with each passing week. I found myself staring at old photos late into the night. Our wedding day, our first apartment, birthdays, and beach trips that felt like another woman's life. How had I missed it? Maybe I didn't want to see. One day, I was working late when a woman rushed into the bank sobbing. Her card had been declined, and she was holding a hospital invoice. "My son needs surgery," she cried. "But the insurance lapsed." "I didn't know, I thought..." She broke down on the floor. I sat beside her. "I know what it feels like to be robbed of everything." Her eyes met mine. "I can't fix this," I said, "but I'll help you talk to someone who can." She nodded. Later, as I walked her to her car, she whispered, "You're not just security, are you?" I didn't answer. I didn't know what I was anymore, but I was something new. The case against Ryan dragged on. He fought back, of course, claimed I abandoned the marriage by deploying, said the accounts were in his name, that I had no idea how finances worked. That last part made me laugh. I had run operations in war zones. I could disarm bombs. But in his eyes, I was just a burden. Melissa looked at me after our third hearing and said, "He's underestimating you. That's his first mistake." 3 months after I came home, I got a call from Melissa at 6:42 a.m. "Emily, we got him." I was half asleep, still in uniform from the night shift. "What do you mean?" A whistleblower came forward, one of his former assistants. She gave us emails, transfer records, a recorded phone call. It's all there. The offshore accounts, the forged signature, the property sales, fraud. Emily, criminal fraud. I sat up straight. "He's going to be indicted," she said, "and you'll get your day in court." I couldn't speak, just nodded as my throat closed. It wasn't joy I felt. It was something deeper. Justice. The slow burn of vindication. That same afternoon, I walked to a small chapel downtown. I hadn't been inside a church since I came back, but something pushed me to go. I sat in the last pew, knees trembling. "I didn't ask for this fight," I whispered, "but I'm still standing, and for the first time." I wept. The tears came hard and loud. Years of pretending I was fine. Years of holding a home together while he planned his escape. Years of saluting a flag while he chased greed. A soft voice broke the silence. "You're not alone," said the priest, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." "I'm tired," I whispered. "So tired." "He gives strength to the weary," he replied, quoting Isaiah, "and increases the power of the weak." That day became my turning point, not because Ryan fell, but because I stood. News of the indictment spread fast in our small community. People whispered, avoided eye contact. Some looked at me with pity, others with awe, but I didn't care anymore. Ryan was arrested on a Friday morning. Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. A dozen counts stacked like bricks on his name. Jenna came over that night with a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 plastic cups. "To justice," she said, raising her glass. I smiled, but my heart was still heavy. The trial began the following month. He walked into the courtroom like nothing had changed. Polished suit, smug smile. But his eyes flicked towards me, and that's when I knew. He didn't expect me to show up, but I did, every single day. I sat in the front row, shoulders back, hands still. I listened to every witness, every shred of evidence, every lie unravel. Then came my turn to speak. I stood before the court, voice steady. "While I was deployed, serving my country, this man, my husband, emptied our accounts, sold our home, and sent me an email to say goodbye. He didn't just break vows, he tried to erase me." The courtroom was silent. I was supposed to come home to peace. Instead, I came home to ruins. But I rebuilt. Not with money, but with truth. When I stepped down, the judge looked at me like she saw something more than just a victim. She saw a warrior. Ryan was sentenced to 5 years. The funds were traced and partially recovered. I received restitution and rights to what was left of our property. But that wasn't the real win. The real victory was walking out of that courtroom and realizing I no longer carried his shadow. I didn't go back to the bank after the trial. I left my badge on the desk, packed my things into a single duffel, and started driving with no real plan. Just the road. The wind and a quiet voice inside sang, "Start again." I ended up in a quiet town 2 hours north, where the trees were taller and the air didn't smell like regret. I rented a tiny apartment above a florist shop. The landlady was in her 60s and always humming gospel songs. One morning, as I helped her carry boxes inside, she said, "You've been through fire, haven't you?" I paused. "It's in your eyes. The ones who survive fire never blink the same way." Her words made me smile. I was tired of pretending I hadn't burned. I found work at a local school, teaching veterans how to transition into civilian life. Every class began the same way. I shared my story, not the war, not the betrayal, the rebuilding. "I'm not here to fix you," I told them, "but I can show you that broken doesn't mean finished." One student, a quiet woman named Claire, stayed after class one day. "My husband left too," she said, eyes full of tears. "Took everything." I nodded. "We're not alone," I told her, "and we're not done." I started going back to church on Sundays, not out of guilt, out of need. Every sermon felt like a balm, every song like a step forward. One Sunday, the pastor read, "Though you have made me see troubles, many and bitter, you will restore my life again." Psalm 71. I held that verse in my heart for weeks. Months passed, seasons shifted. I began to laugh again. Real laughter, the kind that comes from the belly, not the throat. One afternoon, I received a letter. No return address, just my name, handwritten in familiar strokes. Inside was a single sentence, "I'm sorry, Emily, for everything." It was from Ryan. No explanation, no plea, just 7 words too late. I didn't respond, not because I hated him, but because I had nothing left to say. Forgiveness doesn't always need an audience. Instead, I tucked the letter into a small wooden box, the one where I kept my deployment badge, the court documents, and the photograph of me in uniform standing alone at the airport. It was my reminder, pain is real, but so is healing. A few weeks later, the local pastor asked me to speak at a women's retreat. "Your story," he said, "might save someone else." I hesitated. "I'm no preacher." "You're a survivor," he replied, "and that preaches louder than any sermon." I stood before a room of women, some broken, some healing, all listening. I was abandoned by the one who promised to stand by me. I came home to nothing, but in that emptiness, I found what was real: faith, resilience, and the quiet strength of starting over. Their eyes filled with tears. One woman hugged me after and said, "You gave me hope." That night, I walked home under a sky filled with stars, and for the first time in years, I felt peace settle over me like a blanket. Not the peace that comes from money or marriage or security, but the kind that comes from knowing I survived, and I'm not done yet. The day I truly closed that chapter wasn't in a courtroom or during a speech. It was in the garden, behind the church. I had started volunteering there on weekends, pulling weeds, planting flowers, pruning branches. There was something sacred about putting your hands in the dirt and watching life grow where once there was nothing. One Saturday morning, I found a boy sitting alone on the bench by the rose bushes, maybe 12. Dirty shoes, sad eyes. "You lost?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "My mom brings me here. She's inside, praying." I nodded. "It's a good place for that." He hesitated, then whispered, "My dad left. He took all our money, said he'd come back, but he didn't." My breath caught. I sat beside him. "That's not your fault," I said quietly, "and you're not alone." He looked at me, skeptical. "How would you know?" I smiled. Because someone left me too, took everything, and for a while, I thought I'd never get it back. Did you? Number. But I got something better. What? I pointed to the ground. Roots. He frowned. I pressed my hand to the soil. Sometimes, when everything's taken from you, all you have left is the ground beneath your feet. But if you dig deep, if you plant something, you'll grow stronger than before. He was silent for a while. Then he whispered, I want roots too. You will. We sat in silence as a breeze moved through the trees. That day, I realized I had changed. Not because Ryan had been punished, but because I had let go of the anger, the fear, the need for answers. And in that letting go, I became free. 1 year later, I stood on a small stage under a white tent, holding a certificate. It wasn't military. It wasn't legal. It was from the local nonprofit I helped start, New Roots. We offered workshops, job training, counseling for women, rebuilding their lives after loss, betrayal, or financial ruin. We started with 5 women. Now we had 60. Claire, my former student, was now the coordinator. Marvin, the janitor, came to speak every few weeks. Even Jenna volunteered on weekends. Every story was different, but the pain was familiar, and so was the healing. Sometimes people ask if I ever loved Ryan. I did, and that love taught me what I'd never accept again. People also ask if I ever got my money back, some of it. Enough to start again. Enough to stop looking back. But the most important question came from a woman after one of our sessions. She asked, do you ever feel whole again? I looked her in the eyes and said, you don't go back to who you were. You become someone new, someone stronger. That's the truth. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 46 years old. I survived war, betrayal, and heartbreak, and I'm still standing. Because my foundation isn't in wealth or marriage or promises that fade. It's in faith. And in a verse I carry every day in my pocket. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. Proverbs 31:25. To everyone listening to my story, if someone tried to break you emotionally, financially, spiritually, just know this. You can rebuild. You can bloom again. And your roots can run deep.